views and opinions expressed on the State of the Nation are those of the host and staff and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any format in which this broadcast is heard or viewed. Any content provided by our bloggers or authors are of their opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual or anyone or anything. At the State of the Nation we do not condone violence of any nature to any individual, personal property or governmental body. We support the men and women in blue and stand behind our military and all oath takers.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for being with us today on State of the Nation. We appreciate your patronage, and we would ask you, if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, we would ask you to please do so. Also, if you make sure you hit that little bell button, and when you subscribe, what happens is every time we drop a video, you will be notified. Also, if you have not followed our Facebook page, we would ask that you follow our Facebook page so that in the future, whenever we give information, you will receive us on your feed. And of course, as always, please share our information with your friends and family and those around you that need to be informed. Don't be afraid to share us with your non-conservative friends, because what we are all about is information, and the information we give is the truth. It's unlike that lamestream media that they have out there. We actually give hard-hitting facts, and we give the truth to you, the citizens of the United States, the greatest country in the world. Just so that you know, we are heard all around the world. We have listeners in Jordan. We have listeners in Europe. We have listeners in Australia. We also have listeners in blocked countries that I cannot mention. And I just want to tell you, thank you for being a patriot. And remember, you too can also change the things that are happening in your nation by doing this very same thing, becoming a citizen journalist. My name is Danny Torres, and I am your host for State of the Nation. I'm also known as the Digital Watchman, or sometimes the Village Idiot. We have found out they can both be the same thing. So, without further ado, we're going to discuss a couple upcoming things, and then we're going to jump right into the news. All right, State of the Nation, as you can tell by that new intro, we are adding things every day. One of the things we are adding is we've started doing editorials. Our editorials are not only shared on Facebook, but they're also shared with other shows like us. And there's a group of us, there's a network of, they call us social media influencers, that we share information and we provide content to each other. Look, I don't care if someone uses my content, because guess what? I use other people's content. And I just want the truth to get out there. So if I have verified information and verified content out there from other people, hey, I'm going to share it. And they know that they are just as well welcome to our content here on State of the Nation. Believe it or not, State of the Nation has made several of these shows, and our information has been shared. So thank you to those, you know who you are, that are avid listeners to us. Also, I did get a little secret message that some important people have started watching our show. Who could that be? Just a thought. And also, we're going to start having our interview sections. I told you that we are going to bring on guests. Some of the first guests we're going to bring on, one of them is a historian. I call him the professor. He's my friend. And I've known him for many years. I worked right alongside him for many years. And he's a very intelligent, knowledgeable man who is an educator by trade and by schooling. But yet he's an all-around, very moral, godly, upstanding person. And if he brings you information, I promise you it's been researched and there's no doubt about it. Okay? Another person I'm going to share with you from my friendship is a lady that I look up to. I've known her and her husband for many years. And she is a mother and a grandmother of children that are non-vaccinated. And she's going to share with us her non-vaccinated path as a mother and grandmother for children in public schools, in public life, etc. What she went through and the hurdles she had to go through. I will tell you, I know her grandchildren and I know her children, and they are very healthy kids. But we look forward to hearing from her. She's also a avid listener and supporter of this show. So she's introduced me to several very important people. And I'll share with you that more later when we have her on. Next, we're also going to bring on a young man that's an accountant. This is a young man I've known for several years, and I believe in him. He has some good information, accounting skills, but not only that, he looks at things through a biblical perspective. And I'm looking forward to having him on the show to kind of bring in our younger audience and let our younger audience understand they too can be a part of this taking back America from those that would like to change what God has given us as a nation. And lastly, I have a doctor, a PhD, who I shared his book with you on this show, and a very knowledgeable person that I have learned to like and that I can call my friend. And he's just full of information. He also has a show, and he's actually been on several large networks, and he's traveled around the world, and he has a very unique understanding of things. Some of you would call him a prophet. Some of you would call him an intellect. I call him my friend. So we're going to bring him on at some point once we can get all of this information together. Also, we are working on a research paper here. And if you guys notice, I say we. There's more than just me. I know I'm the only one you see, but there's more than just me that brings content to this show. And one day I'll have permission to share those other people, but right now they have asked to remain in the shadows, and that's okay. I believe in these folks, and I can tell you they're very loyal to the State of the Nation show and listeners. So one day they will come out, and we'll be able to share them with you. So we're working on a research paper, and this research paper is entitled The Origin of the Virus, or The Origin of a Virus. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be. We have to be careful how we entitle it, but as I told you before, once this paper is published, it's going to be pushed out to a lot of other outlets, and it's going to be shared with other outlets. So I'm sure we will get some notoriety for this paper, and we're going to like some of the notoriety, and we're going to dislike some of the notoriety. But that's okay. That's how life is, all right? Okay, without further ado, let's get into the business of the day. And we're going to start with none other than the Suez Canal. All right, we've talked a little bit about this in the past. We're going to talk about it now, and I've been given some information that has become very interesting. In this information, I learned some key factors. All right, just to recap a little bit, this is the ship with a given name of the Ever Given. Ever Given. This ship is part of the network or transportation network of Evergreen Network. Evergreen. Now, if you've heard that word before, I will tell you where you've heard it. That word was Hillary Clinton's call sign when she was the First Lady of the United States. Kind of interesting that this Evergreen ship that has been through this canal many times had an unfortunate wreck. Kind of like someone else we know with the name Evergreen. Just saying. Okay, some unique things about this ship. It's piloted by a female captain. Why is that unique? Well, because, remember, the Suez Canal is located in Egypt. In that part of the world, females, for the most part, are not considered as the same class as males. Especially a female in a power position, such as the pilot or the captain of a very large vessel like this. Another unique thing about this ship is this ship is piloted by a 26-year-old female. That's even more strange. Now, what I have learned is this pilot is not cooperating with the investigation. And I guess the crewmates are not either. So they're trying to figure out what exactly happened. Now, if you remember the information I gave you before, this ship, while it was waiting to enter the canal, had a peculiar path of travel. Now, this path of travel mimicked or imaged an appendage from the human body that's only found on a male. You can find this online. I'm not going to show it on my show. But you can imagine a huge container ship like this taking on that type of very strategic route before it enters in to the canal is kind of odd. Okay, I'm going to show you this now, this next photo. All right, so these are the ships that were out waiting to enter into the canal. And all of the green ships are Chinese vessels. Now, there's more than 400 ships that were held up. 360 of those ships had Chinese cargo or were Chinese-owned ships, China is said to be losing $2 billion from this holdup. All right? Now, the next thing we find out is the actual owner of this ship is Taiwan. Let that sink in for a minute, and let's talk about it. Remember, Taiwan was given its freedom from China, and China has been trying to aggressively take back Taiwan as, part of China. They want it to be part of China. They don't want them to have a democracy. Since Administrator Biden came into office, China continues daily to go into Taiwanese airspace, continues to do things that they would never have done while President Trump was in office. So there's some very strange things happening here. And now, when we put this information together, Taiwanese-owned ship, Taiwan having a problem with China, China losing up to $2 billion, a weird path before the ship entered into the canal, a female, even a young female captain that is not being cooperative with the authorities, something is awry here. And the last photo I want to show you how we know that all of this information I gave you about the ships. If you look on this this picture here, all of the ships are named, and just like we found that named vessel, you can go back and tie the number of ships and the amount of ships and who they are and who owns them. And so you can do the research for yourself and check it out, all right? So it appears that Taiwan may have purposely held up billions of dollars in cargo owed to China. If my intel is correct, we should expect China to try and retaliate soon. So, we're just going to have to wait and see what's going on. Next, we're going to move to another very important story. This next story gives me lots of concern. All right. In this picture, you see none other than Administrator Biden and, you guessed it, Susan Rice. Susan Rice. Administrator Biden has just placed a known liar and political hack in charge of the mail-in voting process for the United States. Now I'm going to take you back a little bit. I want you to remember Susan Rice. She was the official for the Obama White House that lied to the American public repeatedly until Congress had to call her on the carpet for her actions on the Benghazi Clinton debacle. You remember Hillary Clinton, and she caused the death of American citizens in Benghazi because of her lack of, how can you say this, her lack of management, her lack of knowledge, or maybe it was intentional, we don't know, for the things that she failed to do in her political tenure at the State Department. Okay? So that's who Susan Rice. Susan Rice is this controversial person. Okay? President Joe Biden put this controversial former National Security Advisor in charge of directing hundreds of federal agencies and departments to know how to expand mail-in voting. Now, guys, what do we know about mail-in voting? What do we know happened with mail-in voting in 2020? What do we understand we are trying to get to the bottom of right now? You guessed it. The Democratic Party wants to do what they did in Georgia and the swing states to every state in the nation. I need you to stand up and say no. Very important that we do not allow this to happen. Okay, next we're going to move to Europe. What we have here is the folks in Europe, the military has placed Europe in its highest standing of alert in many years. According to the New York Times, the head of the U.S. European Command declares a potential crisis, which is the highest potential watch level. The command raised the watch level after 4 Ukrainian troops were killed in recent fighting. The military also raised the warning after Russian troops deployed to the border region between Russia and Ukraine apparently set up military drills but failed to leave after these drills were concluded on March 23rd. Okay, folks, the bottom line, there's fighting happening in and around Europe, and it has escalated to the point that's putting the NATO countries on alert. We need to keep our eye on this because it's very imperative for our troops here at home. And also, remember, rumors of wars. Rumors of wars around the world in the last days. We need to remember that. Okay, next we're going to move on. All right, U.S. migration networks to facilitate migration concerns, according to the Epoch Times. UN networks, which are led by a coalition of U.S. agencies, exist to support the implementation of the controversial Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, which was adopted by the UN and over 150 of its member states in December 2018. I want you guys to think about this. Do you remember a certain president coming out and saying that the UN has a problem? And this is exactly what they were talking about. So, the UN wants every nation to be a global state. They want there to be no borders. They want there to be just a continuous nation between countries. First off, it's ludicrous. This shouldn't even be thought of, but, it is what it is. In this next photo, it's going to make more sense. This is what the Biden administration is pushing for with its crisis on the border. The Biden administration is wanting the United Nations to step in. So far, the Biden administration has not publicly made any of these concrete moves to join the UN Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular migration that was rejected by President Trump. However, his actions on the issues at the border have now been praised by the UN and its international organization for migration, which is leading the charge to promote the global compact with migration. All right, so Joe Biden plans to address these drivers of migration and advance safe and orderly regular migration in the region. Now, what does that mean? That means once they put UN troops on the border, there's no more checks or balances on who comes in and who goes out. Of course, what they're going to say is the UN will help the Border Patrol, but you already know that they are pushing for ICE to be dismantled, for the Border Patrol to be dismantled, for anything that's going to stand in the way to stop these laws in the book from being implemented. By the way, the book is called the 8 CFR and the INA. They are trying to stop these laws that are on the book. And the they is the Biden administration. So it's very possible that coming soon to a border near you will be a UN vehicle looking something like this. All right. Moving on. We had a very interesting message that was put out by none other than Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump has now started using press releases instead of utilizing Twitter. So, in this press release, here's what he put out. He put out, where's Durham? Is he living, breathing? Is he a living, breathing human being? Will there ever be a Durham report? Now, here's what I want to share with you. In the next couple segments that we release, State of the Nation is going to talk about this very thing. All right? Now, I'm going to wet your whistle for this information by letting you hear none other than our former Attorney General, William Barr, on the subject of the Durham report. All right, here we go.
There is not a more important issue than this issue. The American people are being censored. Conservatives are being censored. The information flowing to the American people is being censored. Are you worried about this?
Nuts are one of the healthiest things you can eat. However, some of the most common
Going into the election.
Yes, I am worried about a censorship. I'm worried about a number of things going into the election. One, the censorship of robust debate. I'm also worried about undermining the public confidence in the integrity of the elections. The thing we have going for us, especially when there's intense division in the country, is that we have peaceful transfers of power, and our way of resolving it is to have an election. But when governments, state governments, start adopting these practices like mail-in ballots that open the floodgates of potential fraud, then people's confidence in the outcome of the election is going to be undermined. And that could take the country to a very dark place if we lose confidence in the outcomes of our election. So that, the censorship, the censorship has a number of effects. It also, free speech, being able to get your viewpoint out is a release. It takes some of the pressure out. If people are prevented from expressing their views, that's where you start getting extremism. And so the more ventilating of viewpoints we have, the healthier it is for our country.
Well, there's a big discussion right now about mail-in voting. Hillary
Yeah.
Clinton said it's fine, it's fair.
Well, it absolutely opens the floodgates to fraud. Those things are delivered into mailboxes. They can be taken out. There's questions about whether or not it even denies a secret ballot, because a lot of the states have you signing the outside of the envelope. So the person who opens the envelope will know how people voted. There's no, right now, a foreign country could print up tens of thousands of counterfeit ballots and be very hard for us to detect which was the right and which was the wrong ballot. So I think it can upset confidence.
Give Americans the right to sue technology companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, and if they enforce terms unfairly, should people be having the right to sue these companies?
Yeah, I think there should be more control on how they use data, how they use personal data, and give consumers the right to sue the companies if it's used improperly and not according to the terms of service, or they don't fully disclose, they're not transparent about it.
I know that you did not pursue this position, and in your confirmation hearing in January of 19, you said that you ultimately came back to restore confidence in the system. So I want to ask you how we do that, because we are deeply divided in this country. We know that. And it does look like there are two standards of justice. You go back to 2016, and there were two investigations going on, one into Hillary Clinton's email use and one into Donald Trump and collusion with Russia. We know officially there was no collusion. With the Hillary Clinton investigation, Jim Comey was told by your predecessor, Loretta Lynch, to call it a matter, not an investigation. Bill Clinton met Loretta Lynch on a tarmac 3 days before Hillary was to talk to the FBI. How do you explain that to someone who wants to believe that there's fairness in this country?
Well, I do believe there were two standards of justice during a period of time toward the end of the Obama administration. And all I can do about it is apply one standard of justice, the right standard of justice, and make sure we apply it to everybody equally. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Are you looking again then at what took place with the Hillary Clinton investigation?
I don't want to get into any particular investigation right now.
Why did the DOJ charge General Michael Flynn with false statements, yet did not charge Jim Comey and Andrew McCabe with the same charge?
Well, again, all I can say, I don't want to discuss the details of any particular case, but criminal case, but all I can say is that we are trying to apply the same standard to everybody. And as you know, we have sought to dismiss the charges against General Flynn.
What do you make of what Judge Sullivan is doing? He's pushing back on that, obviously.
Well, as I've said, we disagree with what he's doing. We think the law is clear that it is within the discretion of the executive. It's the executive branch's function and the Attorney General's function to make charging decisions and determine whether to continue on a case. And the judge is supposed to be a neutral judge on the case, not exercise the prosecutor's function. So we're hopeful that the case will be dismissed. We think that's what the law requires.
We're waiting on John Durham's investigation, a criminal investigation. What bearing does the election have on that? I haven't heard any Democrats raise any upset over the fact that wiretapping of an American citizen was illegal. An FBI agent changed evidence, changed a document, a whole host of issues. So am I to believe that if we don't get the results of the John Durham investigation before the election and Donald Trump loses, we won't hear another word about this?
Well, first, I agree with you. It's been stunning that all we've gotten from the mainstream media is sort of bovine silence in the face of the complete collapse of the so-called Russiagate scandal, which they did all they could to sensationalize and drive. And it's like not even a whoops, they just on to the next false scandal. So that has been surprising to me, that people aren't concerned about civil liberties and in the integrity of our governmental process. In terms of the future of Durham's investigation, he's pressing ahead as hard as he can, and I expect that, we will have some developments, hopefully before the end of the summer. But as I've said, his investigation will continue. It's not going to stop because of the election. What happens after the election may depend on who wins the election.
Dr. Gundry, why are salads so bad for weight loss?
Somehow people have gotten the mistaken idea that salads are full of nutrients.
Election.
Has he been delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic?
There has been delay because of the pandemic. Yes, there has.
An inability to interview people?
Yes. Not an inability, but a distinct slowing down of that process.
Because you can't gather a grand jury?
Well, I don't want to suggest there has been or is a grand jury, but it is a fact that there have not been grand juries in virtually all districts for a long period of time, and also people have been reluctant to travel for interviews and things like that. So it has slowed things down, but he's been working where he can on other matters that aren't affected by the pandemic, but there has been an effect.
A source said to me a couple of years ago, speaking of the Russia collusion story, that this was the closest the United States ever came to a coup to take down a president since the assassination of Lincoln. Is that an appropriate statement?
In this sense, I think it is the closest we have come to an organized effort to push a president out of office.
And it continues.
But I'm not reaching a judgment as to what the motivations there were.
Can you tell us anything about how this all started? This is not just an American citizen. This was a man running for president, and this was a person who got elected to become the president. And the FBI thought it was a good idea to launch an investigation into Donald Trump and potential collusion. Why?
Okay, folks, you have it there. Hopefully that's enough to wet your whistle for these next couple. Hopefully there'll be one or maybe two broadcasts that come out on the Durham report, on collusion, how they're all tied together, and what's going on. I will leave you with a couple questions that I'm going to ask of you to think about before we drop these next couple segments. Also, I want to apologize that I had to kind of go through and, stop those YouTube advertisements. I'm not quite to the point where I can afford to buy a YouTube license that's going to let me use YouTube without the, without those, what do you call them, ads, so to speak. So, and I mean, it's cheap for an individual, but for a program like this, it's a lot more money. So, just FYI. And that's why you see some of the distortion and things, because they know exactly what's going on. And just so you guys know, we have regular watchers that watch our show, watch our Facebook page, and we know who they are, and I try to delete them or whatever I can do. Those that literally do this for a living and look at our show, and try to find us doing something wrong so that we get kicked off of social media. And, we're able to see who these people are. I'm not going to give out how we do it, but we know who they are. And we do our very best to get rid of them and block them. And they seem to kind of find their way back in another way. But we're going to continue the process. And I told you before, there's several people that have reoccurring comments on our page. And they are actually my friends. And when I say they're my friends, they're really my friends. And I know them, and they believe a different way than we believe. That's okay. It's America. And as long as they maintain civility, and I would ask you guys, don't curse at them. You can make your thoughts known, but just be nice, play nice in the sandbox. And what this does is this exposes them to the truth, but it also lets you see what we are dealing with as a nation. And so it's important to maintain that full duplex communication with all sides. All right, so in this video, some of the things I showed you, and I want you to think about, subsequent interviews and reporting provided further information on Durham's activities. As you could see, this interview was prior to the 2020 election. And AG Barr, a lot of people don't like the fact that he dismissed himself and was no longer the Attorney General. But one thing I can tell you, he put into place he put into place Durham and gave him free rein to do what he needs to do, that if Biden dismisses Durham, it's definitely going to look like Biden's guilty and that Hillary's guilty. And that's the best way to do it. But also, by him excusing himself from office, and a lot of us were upset that happened, it allowed him to become part of the investigation. What does that mean? Well, if he's no longer the guy in charge, he's just an average citizen. When he becomes an average citizen, he then becomes privy to a investigation process, which may be enlightening to the Durham report. I just want you guys to think about that. I'm not saying that's what happened, but you never know. Remember, Durham put out in a statement on December 9th of 2019, our investigation is not limited to developing information from within the component of the Justice Department. Our investigation has included developing information from other persons and entities, both in the U.S. and outside the U.S. Okay. Based on the information collected, at that time he was talking about what was collected. Now, that was a year and a half ago. So there's a whole lot more information that's been collected and we know of. And we're going to talk about the beginnings of why this came about. But on this video you just watched, I want you to think about this. What about Hillary Clinton? He specifically brought up the fact about her emails and her lying. What about Comey and the FBI? Comey and the FBI, they kept using information on the Russia collusion issue that they knew was not true. What about the leaks that continued to come out? These leaks are important. We have to find out where these leaks came from. We also need to look at what? Colonel Vindman. Don't think that Colonel Vindman's going to get away with what he did. Colonel Vindman a political hack. Mark my words. He's not going to get away with it. Okay? Just trust me. My intelligence tells me he's not getting away with it. When I talk to these people, they say they have the goods on him. This is a good thing. If you don't know who Colonel Vindman was, he was the whistleblower / third-party hearer that Adam Schiff, that whole Schiff show, whatever, clown outfit thing that happened. And anyway, going on. And then election fraud. You heard A.G. Barr telegraphing. He was saying this is going to happen. If you really listen to the way that he said this, remember, this interview you just watched was before the election. Think about what he talked about. Mail-in voting. He talked about election fraud, etc. So now, here's our last question. Is Biden hindering the Durham report? Why am I asking that question? Because that's the very question that on March 26th, 2021, the former President of the United States, Donald Trump, officially put out there. Thank you, friends, so much for being part of the show. We are going to close with prayer. We're going to ask God to bless our country. We're going to ask God to bless those that are in charge of us. I'm going to pray for you and your family. And I'm just going to pray for patriots around the world. Almighty God, as we come before you, we thank you for this opportunity to worship you in spirit and truth. We would ask you, dear God, that you look at our country, God, those that are in charge of us, Lord. We would ask that you let everybody be safe and kept from harm. We would ask, dear God, that if any one person or any persons of parties are trying to do nefarious actions against our great nation, the United States, or against any individuals, whether they be political or any way, we would ask that you bind that action, and we would ask that you send confusion into that camp. And we would ask that you would let exposure to that evil be put out. Also, God, for our listeners, for those people who take the time and watch State of the Nation, I ask that you give them, Lord, good health. I ask that you bless their family. And I ask, dear God, that you give them the ability to make it through one more day. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, remember, patriots, keep your powder dry.